Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us so far. I hope you are enjoying the program. Now let's move on to a new topic, mobility and sustainable cities. Green, inclusive transport and mobility is fundamental to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And in cities, towns and rural areas all over the world, the challenge is clear. To meet the growing needs for transport for more people without compromising the considerations to the climate, the environment, or future generations to come. We need less cars on the road, more biking, more walking, and more shared transport. How do we achieve this? To join me in this discussion today, we have representatives from KPMG Norway, Oslo Metropolitan University, Sparebank 1 Mobility, and the City Council in Oslo. Our first speaker up is Stine Lise Hattestad from KPMG Norway, Sustainability Associate, who will share her reflections from working with the UN program United for Sustainable Cities. Please welcome Stine Lise Hattestad.
Hi. I'm going to talk about a pilot project that started out in Norway. It's quite new, but it actually already have global reach. It's about the partnership between United Cities and KPMG. And what we have in common is that we both are working with sustainability. Working globally, the United Cities are actually running a program which called United for Sustainable Smart Cities. They are benchmarking cities all over the world and actually mapping them up to 92 different indicators. And what you happen to do then is actually to measure based on facts. How is this city or this municipality actually doing regarding to the Sustainable Development Goals, and especially then Sustainable Development Goals 11. And what we are trying to do in KPMG is to cooperate with the United Cities and look at the gaps and see how can we actually take those gaps that we find from facts and find solutions. And solutions in partnership with local society, with NGOs, with businesses, of course, but also with civil society. And then together, hopefully, we can find solutions to make cities all over the world, wherever they are, as sustainable as possible. So this is the cake, the 92 indicators that are developed. This United for Sustainable Smart Cities is a program supported by 17 different UN organizations, and it's ITU that have developed this. And it is a goal to be able to measure one city up to another city and benchmark and actually see how well are we actually doing it. And in Norway, we have done a project together on the West Coast. And actually what you see on the right side here is one of the part of the cake, the 92 indicators. It's from a city that if you just would ask them, they would say that their mobility is great. It's perfect. But as you can see, there are some red dots there. And reds, that means there are things to be done. So what we've done on the West Coast in Norway is that we have put together not only business and the government and the local society, but also politicians. Because what we need is innovation, both on tools, on product and services, but we also need innovation very often when it comes to structure. We need to speed up changes in systemic structure to be able to reach those goals that we have. And that is because maybe something you believe are really, really smart when you innovate it, it ends up not being that smart in the end of the day. Okay, so already it's about 200 cities that have mapped how they're scoring, and it is a goal within 1 year to reach 1,000 cities or municipalities. So it's a huge project, and then each year in the next 10 years, reach 1,000 every year, so it will be 10,000 in 10 years. And what we have done then is actually to map where KPMG have their capabilities, where they have their competence, and where they actually can contribute to make a change. So this is just from one map that we've gone through in Africa, where United Cities already see where are they working or where are the biggest pressure and where can we actually do some changes together. And what are the kind of projects that already been done there that could be of great support for the local community. So it's really exciting. We are together to work with both capacity building, of course, but also need the finance and of course innovation, technology, definitely, and then also how do we find all the right partners, the network, because solutions has to be solved in partnership, especially when we come to city and especially when we come to mobility. So hopefully what we can contribute to in the future is both to do different innovation with methodology, but also with product and services. So that was what I wanted to say, and I believe that everybody can contribute, whether it's a small or a large contribution, but we need to partner up, cross-sectoral. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stine-Lise Hattestad, for some interesting reflections there, which we will dig deeper into during our panel discussions. But first, let's give the floor to Hanne-Cecilie Geirbo, technology anthropologist at Oslo Metropolitan University, who will shed light on this topic from a more academic point of view.
I would like to point out the opportunity that digital platforms represents for redesigning our frames of action. Because digital platforms is an infrastructure, is a technological system, and technological systems that we have in society, they are embedded in them are the values and the worldviews of our societies, historically and up to today. And also, these technological systems, they are shaping the society. They are giving us some kinds of frames that we can work within. And for that reason, it's really important, I think, to see our technological systems or infrastructures as an opportunity for both scrutinizing what kind of assumptions we have about the world, and also for how we can redesign the societies to more sustainable futures. And when it comes to mobility, we see that digital platforms, it's a way where you can collect new kinds of data and you can combine data in new ways. And based on that, it's also possible then to design more flexible mobility solutions based on data about time and space, and also how you visualize and make this data available for people. So in designing mobility solutions, I think it's important to pay attention to how digital platforms can represent a way of thinking radically new about how we organize our mobility in society, and also make sustainable mobility solutions. And another thing I would like to point out is that sustainable mobility is also a matter of inclusiveness. It's a matter of ensuring mobility for all. And you see here is these electric scooters. And the electric scooters have provided a great source of micromobility for citizens. But not everyone can use an electric scooter, and there are also some conflicts coming up here. For instance, visually impaired people. They have problems with these electric scooters because they can get in the way, they can trip on them when they walk on the sidewalk, or also because of the speediness of these scooters when they drive on the sidewalk. And I think it's important then to keep in mind that one group's mobility should not hamper the mobility of other groups. So I think we need to think about mobility as in a sense of a portfolio of mobility solutions. Not every solution cannot be for everyone, but we should make sure that there is some kind of solution for everyone. So if you cannot use an electric scooter, there should be other ways for you to move along in the city. So the portfolio perspective here, I think is important for thinking about the inclusivity of sustainable mobility. Another thing I would like to point out is mobility as a cultural practice. Mobility is not just a matter of getting from A to B. It's also a matter of tradition, what you used to do, sensation, what it feels like to drive a car or to ride a bicycle, and the aesthetics, the aesthetical experience. And that's important for people, these things. And also identity issues, this thing with what you ride tells who you are. Do you identify as a bicyclist or as a car driver or what have you? So when we are designing the solutions, I think that's also an important factor to take into consideration, the cultural practices of mobility. But then again, culture is not static. Culture change. And what is strange and unfamiliar to us today might become the norm tomorrow. And this photo here from this ancient bicycle, it's an example of that. At one point in time, people, that was something that people probably felt very proud to own a bicycle like this, and they connected their identity to this kind of vehicle. But now it doesn't exist anymore. So culture is not static, and what we have today will change. Lastly, I would like to point out user involvement as an important factor for designing successful mobility solutions. And I think user testing is not enough. I think that involving the users from the start, when you're developing the idea and developing the concept, is probably a good way of making a solution that actually fits the group. And then not just perhaps involving the citizens, but also organizations, stakeholders in the process. And often when we are designing solutions, one common trap is this thing that you are designing for yourself. And so avoiding that in terms of then actually finding out who will be the users of this service and then taking their input seriously and trying to design a solution that works for them. And finally, I think involvement, if you involve people, stakeholders and citizens in the process, that can also give ownership to the final solution. So that's also a benefit of user involvement in design, that people might feel more ownership to the final result. So it becomes more successful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hanne Cecilie Geirbo. Now our next speaker is Fredrik Bjørge Johansen from SpareBank 1 Mobility. He will explain to us how the transition towards more sustainable mobility solutions opens up to new business models. Fredrik, the floor is yours.
Thank you for inviting me. First, some information about the SpareBank 1 Alliance. SpareBank 1 is the largest bank alliance in Norway and includes 14 separate banks. And by that, we cover all of Norway with offices from the north to the south. So when we work with products and services, we see the whole country as the market. SpareBank 1 Alliance has about 7,500 employees and is by that a significant employer in Norway. SpareBank 1 Mobilitet is owned by 3 of the financing companies in the alliance, which belong to the banks in the same areas. This is because it's the financing companies that today work most closely with the traditional car industry. And it's these companies' business models that will be most affected by the changes by the new mobility services. SpareBank 1 Mobilitet is a product company in the SpareBank 1 Alliance, and we work to meet the consumer's need for mobility in a changing society. The first focus is to launch a national car subscription service. We have now finished a minimum viable product on the platform, and we are now piloting the car subscription service in Hamar, Trondheim, and Tromsø. A car subscription is a new way to have access to your own car when you need it. All costs, except toll fees and electricity, is included. You can subscribe to a car as long as you want, and you can cancel your subscription whenever you want. A car subscription can increase the utilization of the car fleet, and you subscribe to a car only when you need it. Some months in the winter, or when your life demands easy access to a car. This can reduce the total number of cars on the road. When you control a significant number of cars in a fleet, you can decide what kind of cars that you will include in the service. We can also work together with partners with the same focus on sustainability as SpareBank 1, and we can make it easier for people all over Norway to try electric cars. As a large player in the financial industry, we also have an important role to play in giving people advice about their private economy. The cost of owning a car is one of the largest expenses for many people, and it's important to have an understanding of the cost structure, which is more visible with a fixed cost in a car subscription than in a traditional car ownership. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Young People Big Voices event. Woo!
Thank you so much for interesting presentations. Now we are ready to have a panel discussion. And with us, we also have Einar Wilhelmsen, Green Party politician and representative from the City Council in Oslo. Einar, my first question is for you. You are an experienced politician, an eager urban cyclist, I've heard, and your ambition is to turn Oslo into the most pedestrian-friendly city in the world. What steps do we need to take to make that happen?
Thank you very much for that question. I think that what we realized in the Green Party is that the transport policy is really about sustainability, and I think we should sort of approach it in a wide manner. Many people think that promoting cycling it has to do with the climate policy or maybe fighting air pollution. But it also has a social side, because if we look at how the transport system was before, and still is to a certain degree today, some groups had priority, and that the group with the biggest priority was men my age in the big SUV BMW cars. And we gave right to the cars, and we told the kids to take care of themselves, to be very careful. And you can still see that if you see a father going with his child to kindergarten, and when they're going, he tells the kid, "Oh, keep on the pavement, keep on the pavement. Oh, look around you, look around you." And we should stop up and ask the question: why is it like that? Why do the cars have the priority? So actually, the key question in succeeding with building a city with bike infrastructure, which everyone can use, whether you're old or young, experienced or inexperienced, and whether you have a driver's license or not, that is, who has the priority? And the shift we are trying to make is to giving more priority to pedestrians and more priority to to bike infrastructure and to bikers and to build safe bike infrastructure. And then the conflict begins because the area of the city is limited. So we need to take space from cars and give it to people. And that, of course, when we take away lanes on the road and when we take away free parking space and turns it into to safe bicycle infrastructure, then we will have conflicts, of course. But I think that is just because we have been so used to giving priority to one group that we sort of don't think about it. But when we think about it and analyze it, it's very obvious that prioritizing the cars for many years sort of made conditions for kids and for those who wanted to bike unbearable. So that when we took over, almost all the people biking in Oslo would be men, and they would be around my age, and they would be willing to take quite high risk. And everyone else were not biking because they thought or felt, rightfully or not, that it was just too scary.
Interesting, thank you. And that's a good example of how to incentivize people to bike more and walk more and maybe drive less. Hans-Cecilie, do you have any other thoughts on how we can incentivize people to choose more sustainable modes of transport?
I think it's for people to choose more sustainable modes of transport, it needs to be convenient and pleasurable. I think that's, and then it's something about how you are designing the urban space as well. So it actually it becomes something that you want to do. You want to walk. You want to bike, and yeah. So if the city, if you feel safe for you to bike or safe for you to walk, you would probably choose that. So I think that's an important part of it. And could, of course, be other ways. I mean, I'm part of this research project together with the Polish partners, where we are, it's just starting now though, we're going to develop some kind of a system, a kind of community currency, it's called, where we are directly incentivizing people for choosing more sustainable motor transport and sustainable actions in everyday life. But that's designed, we're going to design it for a Polish setting. So this community currency is then giving you some kind of points that you can exchange for something else that you find valuable. What that is, we don't know yet. But that's more of like a monetary kind of way of thinking, and that might work for some groups, but perhaps I wouldn't think it would work that well in Norway. So I think here actually, since we're already, most of us are quite comfortable, I think we need pleasure. It needs to be pleasurable, it needs to be fun, it needs to be convenient for us to choose to bike or walk instead of driving the car.
I'm glad you brought up an international example, because Stine Lise, I'm curious, you talked about your work with the UN United Cities, and I was wondering if there's anything in particular you think Norway is very good at compared to other international cities and countries, or is there something we should look to other countries in order to improve when it comes to mobility?
I think we always can look to other and improve. It's a lot of the Asian countries actually that do quite a lot of interesting things, but it's also elsewhere in the world. But we also do a lot of interesting things in Norway. But I think the most important things when it comes to whether it's in Norway or whether it's somewhere else in the world, it's about the mindset and what are the trends and what are our thoughts about moving from one place to another, because it's really a time issue as well. So we just need to have another, how do you say, scope of how we decide what we choose of transport, whether it's safe or not. Of course, safe is extremely important, but time is another issue, I think, that is really important. And that has to do totally with the way we're living our life. And I think the pandemic that we are in the middle of still has changed a lot of people, and it's changed a lot of mindsets in different cities all around the world, wherever you are. And I think it's a huge opportunities to make a huge lap that time won't be one of the issues that really makes us move too slow, what you're trying to do here in Oslo. So And time, we have a little bit different view on time right now, I think.
Yeah, time to think more sustainable in many aspects of life, I guess, including mobility. I'm also wondering about this thought about the identity of having a car. Hans-Cecilie, you talked a bit about the identity. We can say that, yes, we don't have time to take the bus or to walk or to take the bike. But to some extent, it's also something that some people interpret that as their identity, part of what they are. They're car owners in the same manners as if you have your own garden spot, you know? How do we change this? Because I feel like some people are quite emotional when it comes to giving up their current transport habits. I don't know, maybe Hans-Cecilie, do you have any thoughts?
Well, it's a very important question and also a very hard one. But I think it's important to be humble and avoid arrogancy in terms of talking to people who are actually love their cars and are very devoted to car as a lifestyle. And then sometimes perhaps the debates about transportation becomes a little bit too polarized. So the car owners are feeling in a way excluded or like that their car culture is not valued. And I think we need to avoid that and also be humble and appreciative of that culture as well. But and also find a way of then, designing sustainable mobility lifestyles too. But
I know.
Yeah, I think I agree that we shouldn't do car shaming or whatever we should call it. But I think we should realize two things. I saw in the fundamental question you were asking for the beginning of this conference, you addressed the need for growing, to address the growing transportation needs. And I disagree. I don't think that is a natural law that we have always needs more transport. That has to do with smart city planning. We can reduce the need for transport. We don't have to think like a road engineer from the 60s. And secondly, the digital revolution we are seeing now is going to take away a lot of the need for transport. No one in Oslo municipality is going to go on a trip to Bergen for a short meeting in the future. I'm absolutely certain of that. So I think we actually are going to see, or if we want to, we can see reduced need for transport, even though the cities are growing in numbers. However, my second point was that what do you do with this car culture? And I think that also has a very physical side. What we are doing in Oslo is not only building bike roads, but we are sort of changing the physical layout of the streets all over the city. We are building hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of speed bumps. We are rebuilding the junctions where the streets cross. So we are bulbing out the pavements into the crossroad so that there will be a short distance for the pedestrian to cross and the car needs to slow really down. And then around the schools, we are making no car zones. So if you want to drive your kid to school, well, you have to park somewhere. You cannot go all the way to the school, you have to park somewhere else and then take the child yourself, the final meters. All this to ensure a sort of physical environment where the kids can walk to schools themselves without the parents being afraid for them because of the traffic. And I think that way we are also changing this car culture. But it is expensive and it's very, very physical. It's sort of pavement for pavement for pavement all over the city.
Just a comment. So what you're doing is actually nudging the inhabitants of Oslo to use less car and use their feet and bicycles more. Kind of.
I'm not sure if I would call it nudging when we are sort of rebuilding the city, but maybe, yes.
It's a way of just forcing people without knowing that you're forcing them to to get other habits.
Yes. Yeah. Forcing and pulling.
Yeah.
Hans-Cecilie, I saw your hand, but first I have a question for Fredrik. I'm curious, these are issues that are very typical to Oslo and cities. Do you see any difficulties moving from urban spaces to more rural areas in terms of driving and transport habits?
as mentioned, I think the future, we will see a wide range of mobility solutions. Some fits the urban communities, and some others fits the rest of Norway that's not urban. And Sparebank and Mobility is established to join forces on mobility in the alliance, and we have banks all over Norway. So we don't think only on the urban areas, of course. And when it comes to cars, it's a lot of talk here about bicycles and walking and everything. But when it comes to cars, we have seen the start of the new services, where car sharing and car subscription, as we work with now, is two of the new solutions. And I think in combination with other mobility solutions and services, that will appear in the ecosystem or in the future, consumers will have a lot more flexibility to choose the most suitable solution. So I think we will see, as you mentioned, a portfolio of mobility solutions, both with bicycles, micromobility, walking, and make it convenient for people to choose the solutions that fits their needs.
Thank you. Yes, Hanne-Cecilie, let's return to you. Do you have a comment regarding this, the conflict between, or not necessarily a conflict, but the issues that appear when we see differences between the cities and the more rural areas of Norway?
Yeah, yes, I think certainly. I mean, the rural areas are they have quite different needs than the cities, and that needs to be taken into consideration. I guess local solutions. What works in Oslo doesn't work in Finnmarksvidda necessarily. So we need to, I think, differentiate there as well.
And then an important keyword here is also local participation. From the experience from your work in Møre og Romsdal, did you see any differences between the cities there in the way they wanted to change how the mobility systems?
It's always differences between cities, but I think it's more things that are alike than different. And even if you talk about city or a rural area, I have friends living in a small city in Norway where the kids can't bike and walk to school, because it's also the road where the big traffic goes. So it doesn't matter if you are, if it's not, as you said, if it's not, if the infrastructure is not there and you're not safe, then it doesn't help if it's a small road or if it's in the middle of nowhere or if it's in the middle of the city, because if it's not safe, it won't be possible to use. But I think you said something about needs, and I think that is actually a huge thing that is in our favor, because very many young people, they don't see the need of having a car. So they're not growing up with the same kind of, how do you say, like you said, this mental thing, owning a car is something that you just should do. And that is what I mean about time, about cost, about needs. It's changing, and we need to change faster. And then that will bring new solutions. And I think everybody's tested out whether sharing car or bicycle or whatever. I haven't heard of anyone that said that was a bad experience.
No. Einar?
Yeah, I think there are sort of two things here. I'm a city boy, but my mother came from a small town, and my grandparents lived there, and it sort of fits your description. It had a lively center when I was a kid. Now it doesn't, because the road goes straight through.
Yep.
And the solution to that has been up there, that they are sort of prioritizing the car because you need a car. And then in the general debate, people will say that, well, it's great that we're getting self-driving cars, because then old people can drive cars even if they don't have a driver's license more, and maybe we should take away the health check for old people so they can drive their car longer and so on. And this digital revolution and self-driving cars and so on is coming very rapidly. But the mistake they have been making is sort of very slow and physical, because what they have been doing there and in most small towns is that they have spread everything out. So nothing is in walking distance. So you sort of cannot live there without a car because it's too far. Everything is too far away. So what you should have done was to build a nice, compact little town where things were within reach. And I have this sad but very good example from my mother's hometown, where the municipality built a home for the elderly, and they probably built it on the cheapest land they could find because funds are limited in a municipality, and it's exactly 2 kilometers away from the city center on a field. Very nice view, but it is 2 kilometers to the nearest store where there is a little cafe. Had they built this home for the elderly on top on that cafe, like they have done where I live at Bøler in Oslo, there's an elderly center they can just take an elevator down to the cafe. And then the old people could have a social life, meet other people, and not only once a week when the bus would pick up those who could or wanted to go in. And so, but that is what I call a sort of a slow choice. You have built that center for the elderly. It is there, and it's going to be there the next 20, 40, 50 years probably. So we need to think very, very carefully now when we plan and when we make decisions in city planning, because your digital revolution is coming very fast and might take us in a way where we don't want to be, where we just have more transport and less cozy small towns which is built for people.
But don't you think it's... Oh, sorry.
I'll give the word to Hanne-Cecilie first. Yes.
No, I think that's what you're saying there is really important, and this thing about thinking carefully about the infrastructures that we build and what kind of worldviews and values that are embedded in them. So we're not building, say, car-centric societies based on, say, infrastructures that are stimulating, because the distances are too great. And of course, the path dependencies. You invest in something, and then you have that for a long time. It's not so easy to change. So it's super important to think carefully about what we build now. Yeah.
Mm. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to say, I really have worked with sustainability for 12 years, so it's all I really believe in, but I don't think it's an either or. So it's how do we find that transportation that are the best for the people and the best for the society and the environment at the same time. Because I would hate if my children grown up or grandchildren or whatever in a town or in a big city where it's really possible to bike around and everything, but they never go to the mountains because the transport systems, having a car is something you should forbid everybody. So it's we have to be pragmatic and have to see the large picture both ways, I think. Don't you agree?
Yes, I agree, but I think this bike versus car, I think that the debate is slightly spurious because well, you can come up to the bridge I cross every day I go to work at Manglerud and look at the E6 road and see if you feel that there is any lack of cars there. It isn't. The problem is that there are too many cars now. I mean, we must plan very carefully so we don't make even more cars, because then we need lots and lots of space in the city and around the city just for roads. That is very, very inefficient. It destroys a lot of nature. Whether those cars are self-driving or not, they make the same amount of noise and they take the same amount of space.
We have one last concluding remark from Fredrik here.
Yeah, thank you. Then it's up to us to build the solutions that make it possible to choose the car when we need the car and not use the car because we have a car. And that's one of the things we are working on right now.
Thank you. And that concludes today's discussion on mobility and sustainable cities. It has been a pleasure to discuss this topic with inspiring panelists. So thank you so much, everyone. We have now come to the end of the Forum 2021. Thank you so much, everyone, for tagging along with us. It has been a pleasure to see so many people following our discussions, our workshops and debates. Thank you so much. Please do not hesitate to get in touch if you have any questions, and feel free to follow us on social media, our website, and stay tuned for our merger with Young Sustainable Impact.